Can I just let it out?
Absolutely.
People are being lied to about health insurance. People are being misinformed and miseducated, both on the individual side and the group side. I learned how companies were doing it on the individual side, left that company, started my own, sold my book of business to join a bigger company that's on the group side that I thought, because it's this billion-dollar company, that they're going to be doing the right thing. Bring my mic up. Huh? Boy, was I wrong. So, then now we're back into like 2022, 2023. So once I learned the game that was being played, Richard, I decided that I didn't want to play that game. Like I said, it's got to be legal, moral, and ethical for me.
Welcome to the Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help home service pros cut through the noise, sharpen their business tools, and reclaim the profit, freedom, and impact they've been missing. I'm your host, Richard Walsh, Profit Freedom Coach, and I'm here to help you stop grinding and start growing. Let's sharpen the spear. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Paul Flowers with us today, and we are going to dive into some stuff that's going to be somewhat unique in its own right. But we're going to go deep. We're going to hit some great stuff. And without any further ado, Paul, no one knows Paul better than Paul. So, Paul, give us that backstory, bring us up to speed, and let's get into the conversation.
Well, first and foremost, Richard, thank you so much for you and the entire Sharpen the Spear family, for all your loyal listeners, your friends, family, fans, everyone in the listening sphere and audience. I'm grateful for you all for, again, providing the opportunity to get on here, connect, and share. And ultimately, that's what we do, right? As podcast hosts and guests, we connect and share. So thank you for the opportunity. You say, no one knows Paul better than Paul. There are some people out there that think that they know Paul better than Paul. And occasionally you have to help guide and steer them in the right direction to realize that there is truly, like you said, one person that typically knows you best. And in learning myself, Richard, I've realized a few things. I really enjoy education as a kind of a tenet of who I am, meaning that not just learning for me, but also learning and sharing with other people and creating opportunities, right, through connection. So that's something that is kind of near and dear. We'll go back down memory lane in order to come forward. So just from a personal standpoint, like, who is Paul the guy? Grew up in Chicago, south side of the city. Mother raised myself and my sister. My sister's 3 years older than me. My father passed away when I was 3 and my sister was 6. So I said, whenever I become a father, I'd be the best father ever, which I think I'm pretty much holding up to. I've got a 12-year-old son, 2 and 1-year-old daughters. Fast forward, private Catholic school for 13 years. So I know how to stand, sit, and kneel, stand, sit, and kneel, stand, sit, and kneel, right? And don't get them out of order. Moved away to Southern Illinois and did this lovely thing they call, what do they call that? College, that's right. And man, when I, look, listen, I don't knock the experience. I'm not a fan of the debt and the lack of being able to, for some, not all, because of course, doctors that are MDs, they absolutely use their degrees, right? English majors that go into law, they absolutely use their degrees. Well, I was biological science, right? I was pre-med, but that's because my mother wanted me to be a doctor. And after I got into it, I realized that I didn't want to do that. So, joined a organization called Toastmasters when I was down there, learned to actually speak and not just talk. Got into personal development, and that's actually where I got into the insurance field, strangely enough, through direct sales. A company called Prepaid Legal at the time, their Legal Shield now, was an insurance company in 16 states. It was considered insurance. So I had to get my limited lines producer license, and that was kind of the off to the races, so to speak. I reestablished my love for learning through, again, reading, audiobooks, like all this stuff I'm just pouring into myself. So, a little a free tip for the listeners: you are the one that has to pour into you, right? It's not about waiting for some magical person or somebody out there to pour into you. And yes, you'll come across great people in your life that will do that. But if you're not doing that for yourself, it'll be seldom that other people are going to pour into you. So that was my little tip and lesson, is that I needed to pour into me. And as I poured into me, Richard, the floodgates opened. So fast forward, let's see, that's college time. I came back to Chicago, oh, I was in the AmeriCorps and Leader Corps and did this program out in DC. I was going to stay in DC, came back to help out family, ended up stumbling upon a fiance and a family of my own. Became instant dad, right? Of bonus dad, as they call it. And then produced my firstborn child, which was my spouse at the time's third and my first. So I'm a father at 27, right? Trying to figure this thing out, going from independent work to corporate work. And man, it got interesting, right? Needless to say, I couldn't necessarily 100% depend on the corporate, as I learned a couple years in, because they told me one thing and did another. And though, ragging on the previous employer is not the entire topic of this one, I will say this: investigate these companies before you align yourself with these companies. And if they don't really mesh with you, and my three areas are legal, moral, and ethical. If they don't really mess with you in certain areas, pass on the opportunity. But I am really thankful for that company that got me into health insurance. And that's where I really had that claim to fame, where I realized that people, and you know what, I'll just be frank if I can. Just can I just let it out?
Absolutely.
People are being lied to about health insurance. People are being misinformed and miseducated, both on the individual side and the group side. I learned how companies were doing it on the individual side, left that company, started my own, sold my book of business to join a bigger company that's on the group side, that I thought, because it's this billion-dollar company, that they're going to be doing the right thing. Bring my mic up. Huh? Boy, was I wrong. So, then now we're back into like 2022, 2023. So once I learned the game that was being played, Richard, I decided that I didn't want to play that game. Like I said, it's got to be legal, moral, and ethical for me. And though what they're doing is entirely legal, right? I don't want to put any false claims out there. 100% legal, what these companies and brokers are doing, from these national brokers and national carriers across the country, 100% legal. Is it moral and is it ethical? That's where the question, again, I answered for myself. It wasn't for me. But that's where, again, upon investigation, people may come up with some different responses. So here we are. Superior Insurance Advisors is my baby. I consult currently and work with brokers across the country, advisors across the country, that are part of my Next Gen Mastermind group, as well as Health Rosetta. And currently we help employers to drive down the cost of their coverage while increasing the quality of their coverage. Authored a few books on the topics. They're on Amazon. They all hit bestseller. So, I'm findable in the social sphere. You type in Paul H. Flowers Jr., which is why I use my full name for branding purposes, and you can see a few things.
Awesome. Yeah, it is this arena, the healthcare arena. I mean, we have, if you've been around for any amount of time, especially if you go back to 2012, right? 2010, 2011, all this. And it started just snowballing, right? Just this, gotta have people just losing their minds, forced to get coverage, get this, get that, all this stuff. And it really, I am far from any sort of expert, right? I just know from a business standpoint, the hoops just became so many, and I have companies I coach and work with, and they want to provide benefits, but a lot of it is like cost ineffective. It's not cost effective to like get this for, and they have, 49 people or 45, because if they have 50, it's a whole different game, right? Yep. So it's like, so now they have to actually limit their growth or find new ways to do more with less, right? From automation and everything else. So because of healthcare, because of health insurance, rather, forget the healthcare, it's health insurance.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah.
Big difference, right? So it's a struggle for business owners. And a lot of people, my listeners, are business owners, right? Smaller businesses, 5, 10, 15, 30, 40, 50 people, stuff like that, even larger. But you really look at it like, this is why I want to talk to you about this, because people, they don't have access to the alternatives.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that's by design. Right. And now you're a business who's going to save people, great amount, everything else, but you suffer like every other business. One of the number one issues with any business is what? The battle against obscurity. Right. How do people know me? How do
Exactly.
people get to know me, right? Like how can I share with them? We're talking before like about networks and who we know and stuff like that to help. And it's really important for people like, man, you got to search this stuff out.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. Again, a lot of owners don't have the bandwidth, if you will,
Right.
to,
Yeah.
to spend on all this stuff. So it's like, man,
Exactly.
that's why I love this is another great reason for podcasting.
Right. Right. It
You can
provides you the
share
ability.
this to whoever's listening, all 12 of my listeners or whatever. It's just, I say like, but you know what I mean? Like this is 45 minutes, bam, we hit this. And now you've talked to, a gazillion people, which is awesome. And that's again, one of the ways as business owners that we have to be creative and pivot and get the word out there because your intent is to help businesses. It's not, gee, let me enrich Paul.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like we have a lot of different motivations for what we do. A lot of people do. Some it's the money. There's nothing wrong with money, but if I can help people and make money, I like that.
Win-win. Exactly.
That's what we do. So let's kind of get into this a little bit. Like, give us some of the bones
Mhm.
to the whole thing here. Then we'll throw some meat on top there and have lunch.
Okay. Okay. So and I like to put things. And let me say it rephrase before I even say it out loud. Um, I was given a gift, and I learned that that gift was taking the things that are amazingly complex and turning them into something that's very, very simple to understand. And with that, health insurance, it seems, and it is intentionally made to seem very, very complex for employers. But in reality, it's actually very simple. You've got a handful of things that are hidden behind this black box, so to speak. And I actually did where was that? A 1 million cups event where I kind of peeled off the layers of that black box. So inside that black box, you've got a basically a pharmacy benefit manager. So how do you get your drugs? And you've got a network of doctors, right? Who can we go and see? You've got case management or care management, right? Who's helping us to find the right places to go, and then you've got your manager of the plan. Now these are typically like your big box brokers, your Willis Towers Watsons, your Aons, that type of Brown and Brown, right? And the interesting thing about it is that they're not the only game in town, but B, they've got some great marketing. So you get to see them, right? So for the employers out there, you see all these brands and it makes it seem more comfortable. Now, behind the scenes, the big box brokers have relationships with what we call BUCAs, B-U-C-A, stands for Blue Cross United Cigna and Aetna. Again, four companies that we all know because they have huge marketing budgets. Well, if there's a huge marketing expense, the money from it has to come from somewhere. So there's your first clue. If you see them everywhere and like they're sponsoring NASCAR and all this stuff, then that money's likely got to come from somewhere. And no one really asked the question, but why are there only four main carriers, right? Why are there only four primary providers of what we consider health insurance and or healthcare? And with there only being four, doesn't that kind of seem monopolistic to you? Or I mean, maybe that's just me, but if there are only four automakers in the world, right, that would seem a little odd. I would be like, maybe something's going on with that. So in the world of healthcare, you've got these main players. And now we've talked about the brokers, right? The big box brokers, and then we've talked about the companies themselves. Well, let's talk about the employer and employee. The employer is approached by your big box broker, and they're typically providing to you one of the big box carriers. What they're not telling you is that all those little pieces behind the curtain of the health plan can be broken apart, purchased a la carte, and have a huge savings for the employer. Easiest way to put it. Right? So I think I've talked for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. That's healthcare in a nutshell. There's a box, there's a few things in it that they can all be broken apart and purchased for much, much less. And the beautiful part about it is when you purchase them for less, you can typically have more control over your data, more control over like actually viewing inside the plan and seeing what's going on. Whereas when you're working with the BUCAs, you don't have that same visibility. When you're working with some of these big box brokers, they don't necessarily have the visibility either. And what I found is that they don't really care because of the relationship between the big box broker and the big box carrier. Big box broker is paid additional dollars to make sure that they have more bodies on the plan. And I'll give you a quick story about this. This will kind of nail it home. Two stories. One, when I started again with that big box broker, we were brought into a room, and I'm the new guy, right? So I'm the fly on the wall. I'm like, okay, I'm going to partner with this company. We're going to do some great things. So just sit back and learn. So I'm sitting there, and they say, okay, person, I'll just call him person B, right? I won't say it by name, but person B from one of these major carriers comes in the room, and they put their entire book of business up on the screen. So all of the employees that have coverage through this specific carrier are up on the screen. Now, renewal time is a time of year where basically your plan goes up, right? Essentially, that's what it is. But where you renew your coverage for the next year. Now, one would think that in health insurance, right, healthcare, that the renewal is going to be based off of the health of the people using the plan. That makes sense. So if there's a high utilization, then it's likely that there's going to be a high renewal. If there's a low to a moderate utilization, it would make sense if there's a low to moderate renewal. Well, all of these plans are up on screen. And the conversation I heard is the most sickening thing that I've ever heard from a corporate standpoint. They say, well, this company, they had a really good year financially. You can increase their renewal a few more points. I said, wait, okay, maybe I didn't hear that right. And he points to another company and said, well, this one, who's got this one? One of the brokers like, oh, that's me. What can we do here? And say, you know what? They said if they go up any more, they're going to have to switch to another carrier. So we need to keep them flat, right? Maybe they can handle 1 or 2 points, but we should pretty much keep them flat. Okay. So then they drop it down. This company here, they actually had a really bad year. I think they were like 4%. So, bring them down to like 2 or 3, right? So they'll lose percent in one place, but pick it up in others. And I'm like, wait a second. In that entire hour and a half, 2-hour conversation, not one time did they bring up, oh, they had a high claim year. Oh, they had a lot of people that were sick, or a lot of people taking a certain medication, or a lot of people with certain injuries, or a lot of dependent concerns. Nothing about the people. 100% of the conversation was about the profitability of that book of business and the fact that they had to keep those people on the book of business so that not only their upfront commission could be retained, but the back end bonus commission for having a certain number of people on the plan, for having so many prescriptions filled, for having so many new bodies come onto the plan, and the list goes on and on. When I sat and I read, and not read, excuse me, but when I experienced this firsthand, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work long time for me. I just don't do business that way. So, long and short of it, I ended up parting ways with them and coming back because I had to sell my book of business. So I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this the right way, do this employee benefits thing the right way. So I partnered up with Health Rosetta and Next Gen Mastermind, both of which are organizations that are nationwide and that actually do this, and again, it's subjective. So again, go and do your own research, but they do it the right way. They are transparent about the payment. They're typically fee-based. So instead of taking all the money from the BUCAs, no, the employer says, here, this is the set fee that we're going to have to implement your services. And it takes away the misaligned incentives between the broker and the carrier, right? Because if the carrier is going to pay you X number of additional dollars to keep these people on the plan, would you take them off the plan? Would you lose that big bonus that the company's getting in the background? And that's a corporate thing. And a lot of times, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the answer was no. They're not going to take these people off of plan A to put them on plan B, even if it's a better plan, because plan A has got those back-end bonuses. So again, as I learned more about how the true finances work between large corporate brokerage houses and the carriers that they typically recommend, I couldn't do it, right? I couldn't do it. So I'm truly thankful at this point for the affiliations that I had where, like I said, I was just in Utah last week for the week, with, my partners with Next Gen. And when I say it was the most amazing thing to see the savings, right? They walk people across the stage with these employers have big checks that they get back, essentially a dividend from their health plan. And somebody listens to this, wait, dividend from a health plan? What? My health plan can pay me? There's so many ways that you can actually set your HR function and the health plan that it operates around as a profit center as opposed to a cost center. But your big box broker will never tell you that, because why? It doesn't benefit them. So yeah, that's a little bit of a skeleton. We can, if you got some pointed questions, by all means ask me. But I can talk about this. Admittedly, a lot in distaste for how it's been done, for on and on and on. But
sure.
you mentioned employers under 50. There are options for employers under 50 also that are non-VUCA plans. But again, I actually got an email, because I stay on some of these mailing lists because I previously had contracts with them also. They talk about the first X number of groups that you sign up to get certain bonuses. And again, I won't mention the carrier, but it's one of those big four. And I keep getting these just so that I can see, stay in the loop. So for the employers out there that have less than 50, where they want to offer something, there are what's called partially self-funded plans that can be administered as well. Now, they may have to, meaning the employees may have to undergo individual health questionnaires to properly rate the group. But then behind that box that we talked about earlier, there's a TPA in there, again, the person that administers the claims. There's stop loss insurance, basically what stops you from having to pay these huge, ginormous claims is a plan that says you can only pay up to this much, right? So all those things are in there, and that's actually available to a smaller employer as well. But most brokers either don't think that it's worth their time, or they don't get compensated enough in order to offer, again, the things that are lower cost but higher quality to these employers. So they stick with the big brands.
Yeah, I think the challenge, Paul, is like you said, it's commissions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everyone wants to make money. Don't get me wrong, right? We all want to sell, make money, but the trouble with, and something I teach when I'm coaching clients in business, is in the simplest way, upsell, downsell. Okay. So when I'm talking to a customer, when I want them talking to a customer, you need to have upsells. Here's my main product. It costs X dollars. Or I've got this and this above that. You can add this to it, right? But then they can't do the one. Well, I have this downsell.
Exactly.
I have a less product. This is like, and you share that because you're going to close a deal.
Exactly.
Okay. The goal is to close a deal.
Close a deal. Get the
not just share information, right? So, so you want to have upsell and you want to have downsell. You got Tremaine. Here's the big thing. Now, hey, how would you like to bundle that? How would you like a mirror and this and this and this to go with it? And you're going to save $700. Now, wow, now I got them spending more money, right? And they're getting more value, right? That kind of thing. So I think that's one of those things that's missing as you're describing in this. They just want the top. They don't let you know there's something else. It's like, you got to buy this because we're the four people that you can get it from.
Come on, man.
Now, and I'm telling you, like, this has bugged me for decades. And I'm like, why only here?
Right.
Why can't I cross a state line? Like, it's stinking health insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who cares? You know, I mean, I'm like, the whole world, like, they could, you know what I mean? Like, I can take payment from Australia today and be paid. Like, I can do anything I want anywhere. I can get anything I want within 24 hours from the world. Okay. And you're telling me I got to stay in here for this. I'm like, I just, so whatever I think it's just a contrarian me, that I'm a contrarian. So everything's suspect. If you're the big ones, I'm like, okay, there's something wrong with this. You're like, where's the competition? You know, where like you said, there's a lot behind the curtain that we don't get to see. Right.
Exactly. And it's a game, and I'll just, loop myself into it because I'm still a part of the mass, right, of Americans that are, I'm not on those plans anymore, but, that have used them in the past. We're being misinformed. And it's not until we take that contrarian view and learn to ask intelligent questions and say, well, why is this? Is there another way? how can this be done differently, right? That's when those answers start to open up. But oftentimes what we'll find, and this is uh, not a particular poke at the profession, um, but I will say that there are, and again, I'm choosing my words wisely because I have a tremendous amount of respect for these individuals. Um, Inside the human resource space, there a portion of what's learned is the healthcare and the benefit space. They're not their job is not to know what we know, and I respect that. Same thing as a CFO. They understand that there's a P&L for the company, and that healthcare is a line item out of all of the other expenses that the company has. Typically, it's the second largest expense. So what I've shared with and had some agreement from several CFOs is they actually run a healthcare company, whether they know it or not. Every large corporation, and when I say large, I'll say over 50 or 100 employees, they're running a healthcare business. They just don't know it. So it would make sense then if you, like with any other line item from a CFO's perspective, if the cost went up 15% from one year to the next year, wouldn't you want to know why? Wouldn't you want to get down to the very minutia and evaluate whether or not the methodology that's being used, let's say was that manufacturing, for instance, if something on the supply chain went up 15, 20%, you would break down the walls in order to figure out why that cost rose the way that it did. Why don't we do the same thing for healthcare? It is supply chain management. There is effectively healthcare supply chain management, which is what we do. We manage that supply chain. But when it's all boxed up and really pretty and got a pretty buka bow on it, no one wants to ask the question or kind of uncover that. So yeah, I'm really glad that you're bringing these things up. And I'm sorry to note that you've had to connect with business owners that didn't feel like they've had options, when truthfully those options, majority of them, have been around for years.
Yeah, I had one company in particular in manufacturing, like you're speaking about, and I mean, I watched this guy. He's such a great owner. Like, cares about his people, man, does everything he can for them, delivers an amazing product, all this stuff. And he's just wringing his hands for years to be able to provide benefits for people, but he couldn't find a cost effective way. He finally has, after years. I mean, it's an incredible deal he's got for his people. Like, it's a real winner, so I can't get all the details for you because I don't know them all. I just know that I have people I know work for him. Okay. Plus I coach them and everything else. And I see this and it's amazing. It's not what you've seen before. It's not your standard, right? Because him, like me, he's like, no, there's something wrong here. He's like, there's just, and as most entrepreneurs, Paul, I believe we all have that intuition because we get it. We live in this world. Right. We understand costs. We understand, profitability. We understand all this stuff. And we can look at something and go, I'm doing these numbers in my head. And I'm not Mr. Numbers, but I look at stuff and I go, how in the world are they pulling that off? How are they in business? Okay. And, here's for everyone will relate to this. The U.S. Postal Service, the head postmaster general, whoever he is, said in the next 10 years, there'll be $100 billion in the hole. $100 billion in the hole in the next 10 years. And I'm looking, and you're okay?
Right.
I'm not understanding, like, we shouldn't be getting mail. That's what I thought. I go, how are we getting mail? Why haven't you just evaporated?
Exactly.
You literally know $100 billion in the next 10 years. You're going to lose $10 billion a year for the next 10 years, and like, you're still in business.
Exactly.
You and I can't do that.
Not at all. Not at all.
We're not doing that. It's, are they the too big to fail ones? I don't know. But you know what I mean? It's like, but you look at it, like, it's so poorly run. That's a whole nother animal, right? But even these guys who tend to have this monopoly, okay, because they're big, and you said they got the massive advertising budget, which is a really good point you made, Paul. I think people have to look at that too. And then, like you said, without saying it, you said someone's got to pay that. Well, that someone's us, the recipients of the benefits, right? I mean, you don't, the stuff in insurance companies, other, regular car insurance, everything, they're all the same. You're paying commissions, big
Mhm.
commissions, right? And so they're doing the same thing. And I've told this story before, but I had business insurance and my vehicles and all the stuff for my business. It was running me about 23,000 a year. Not a
Right.
huge number, but it's 23 grand. So I had an insurance agent. He would come by. A friend of mine. We rented this construction space,
Mhm.
and he'd be talking to him. And he goes, "Hey man, have you ever like checked your rates?" He goes, "No man, I got a great insurance company. Man, they take care of me. Man, they love me. I'm all good." He goes, "Well, okay. Well, it's probably good just to shop. I'd be happy to give you a
Mhm.
quote. Apples to apples. Yeah, yeah, I'm good." So this went on for like 2 years.
Okay.
I'd see him and he asked me, and finally he wore me down. I'm like, "Okay, well, go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Here's what I got. See what you got." He comes back in like a day and he goes, "Okay, here it is. Exactly the same policy he showed me
Huh.
for 6,700 a year."
Ah.
And I go, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "This is why I've been telling you, you got to shop. And even when you get
Mhm.
this, I expect you to shop every year or two.
Exactly.
Worst case, every 2 years, find it, And I'm like, oh, that was an eye opener. And was I ticked off at my insurance agent? You don't care about me. You don't care about me. Thinking they
Exactly.
care. I was like, they don't care. Oh, you don't care. 20, that's a huge number. Okay.
Big difference. Big
And it's
difference.
like, man, that's profit. You know what I mean? That's
Mhm.
$16,000 in profit. I
Every
just
year.
saved because this guy is 16,000. I'm gonna put
Mhm.
in my pocket. I'm like, dang, I'm just stupid.
No,
Just
no, no.
like you know what I mean. But I mean that in somewhat jest. But just here's a guy who wants to help me out. Not going to cost me a thing for him to get a comparison, and it was exactly apples to apples.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang. So now that's my cautionary tale to everybody.
I'm just curious, and again, you don't have to name names and things like that, but with that main policy that you had, was it one that is maybe more well known, that larger policy that you're paying more for? Was it
Sure.
more well known? Did you see were they one of those companies that you might see on a
Yeah.
stadium or like
Yeah.
commercials and stuff like that?
Yeah. You get that, and it's like, and you think because you think with business insurance, you think you're very limited. You think
Hmm.
health insurance is limited. Like, oh no, we don't do business insurance. We only do
Right.
this, and they stop there, right? They'll do your homeowners, and they'll do this, and they'll do residential stuff, but they won't
Hmm.
do a business. So and I'm going back. Whoa, when was this? In the late '90s, early 2000s, and I'm like, so I'm like, well, I'm limited. There's not a lot of people who are doing this business thing,
Hmm.
that there's 32 million of, and no one's serving them.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
like,
just,
I'm like, something's wrong with the picture here,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. So I just call me crazy, call me skeptic.
No, you're spot on. Like, I did a stint, and I still do, offer life insurance for clients. Um, but I had a conversation. I was doing some consulting for a pretty large company and helping them to teach their direct to consumer life insurance team to sell better over the phone, because I did really, really well over the phone in healthcare, and then really, really well over the phone and life insurance also. And as we were having conversations, not just amongst the management team, but I would get on the phone and actually talk to clients. Some of the clients would only they worked with this particular company because it was one that was, when I say so well known, um, people, I can't, like, without saying the name, people have seen this company all their lives,
Right.
from being babies to adults,
Right.
right? And you see this company in a number of ways. So when I would talk to clients, they would talk about how they were with this particular company because of the name recognition. And I, even though I was consulting with this company, so I probably shouldn't have said this, I was really transparent. I said, well, ma'am, just so you understand and that there are over 700 active life insurance companies in the United States. So this isn't the only game in town. And yes, you see them, but that's because you see them on the shelf at your stores, and you've seen them for the last 50, 100 years, right? As a child and grown all the way up. So I can understand why you would want to work with them and see them. But if there's any hesitance, just go and shop, right? Go and shop. This isn't the only game in town. There's 700 more where this came from. and they can provide you virtually the same thing. So do due diligence. So for everybody, with any policy that you have, if somebody's telling you that they're the only game in town, number one, you should run. If you're noticing that what you have is going up every year and the person that's helped you to get that policy initially can only offer you that specific company, to me, run, right? Run. Because there are so many options on home and auto. There's so many options. Again, they may be lesser known, but that doesn't mean that their financial strength is any less than. And better ratings, Standard and Poor's ratings, like Moody's ratings. Those are the ratings that you look at just to make sure that the company can pay their bills at the end of the day. But what a lot of people aren't aware of also is that there are funds that are guarantee and government backed that will pay if something happens with that particular company. So if they go on default, if they go out of business for whatever reason, there's still limits that can be paid up to a certain point, right? If you have an incident or an accident. So there's a lot more, I'll call it reinsurance, and I'll use that term not to go down that rabbit hole because that is something specifically that we use in the healthcare space. But there's a lot more reassurance around insurance than what people know. And once they kind of learn, and then not to say you got to go to school for 20 years for it, but once you learn some of these little minutiae about it, you can learn to be more comfortable with accepting something that doesn't have a stadium behind it, because ultimately the bill's going to get paid.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think people, they want that sense of security. They feel like whether it's your car insurance, your home insurance, your health insurance, like it has to come from this completely solid, been here 100 years. Now there's a point to that. There's some metrics that's involved in that matter, but that kind of blind allegiance.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's blind allegiance. And that doesn't usually work out well.
At all.
Okay. Right. So
well, it works out for somebody. It works out for the company.
Exactly. And that's why they do it. So we get that. But I always encourage my clients, like, we have to look different. We have to think different. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're usually more the underdog. We're not the Fortune 100, 500, even 1,000. We're small businesses, 10, 20, 50, 75 people. Like, dude, we're the guys who fight every day. You know what I mean? We're in the mix every day. There's no coasting here. There's no, massive budget. So we have to be very, very targeted, very systematic on what we do in these decisions that we make, right? So the problem is, who do we get to give us this information, right? I get it. We got the internet, right? But you're starting with no knowledge.
Exactly.
So you could be told lies on the first 5 sites you hit on. Like, how do you know what's real and what's not? You go to Wikipedia and 2/3 of that is lies. Okay. It's like totally wrong information. So you're like, all this stuff, Chat GPT, they all have biases, and you'll go in this stuff. So it's like, it's disseminating this information to get those savings and what's legit. You know what I mean? I think that's still where it's difficult, and not to shoot the messenger here, but you need that, how do you find, let's put in the question form for you, Paul. How do you find that high integrity, agent, someone like you, how do you find these people, and like, what's the litmus test? Like you said, you've got, the ethical, moral, and
illegal,
illegal, right? So those are like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you?
Yeah. How does a consumer engage with a person that ultimately holds himself to that same level of integrity in the business that they do? And honestly, I'll so shameless plug, right? www.paul.health, right? So find me. I'm Paul H. Flowers Jr. on all the social media, but myself aside, there are companies like the Granite List. There are companies like Validation Institute. Specifically, I'm really a fan of Validation Institute, because what they do is they actually evaluate the claims made by these vendors. Somebody says, hey, we can basically guarantee that we can save your company X% year over year. Well, Validation Institute is going to go to that company, pull all the records, match it up with the claim, and validate whether or not over a consistent amount of business, the claims that the person or the vendor has are true. Now, this is more so on the employer side, specifically more siloed to healthcare. But these types of things are out there, right? And you think of it like the Angie's List for whatever the services are. And honestly, I'm just going to say it, and it might rub people the wrong way. Sometimes you got to do a little bit more due diligence, right?
Yeah.
Look, we will spend hours researching the best Sony television, high definition, HP bio with the screen, the LCD, and we'll know more about pixelation by the time we purchase that next television, right? Or for those that love vacations, we will understand what the grains of sand, how they originated on this beach, how clear the water quality is, and what type of metal is in the ceiling fan and the veranda fan out on the beach in Poconos or somewhere. So we'll know all of this stuff about the things that we care about, right? That are important to us. Really not just say the things that are fun. No, healthcare is not pretty, right? It's not the sexiest thing that you can pull off the shelf and say, look at my sexy healthcare plan, right? And if you do just a little bit more due diligence and at least understanding what's behind it, again, don't go to school for 20 years for it. Hell, I didn't go to school for 20 years for it, but I've been in this field for 20 years. And there's a lot that you learn along the way. But learn something, right? Pick up a book. If you can spend an hour on TikTok mindlessly scrolling, and this is for adults, right? I'm talking to an adult business owner crowd. We all do it, right? We sit on Facebook or whatever your social is of choice, and you might lose 20 minutes here, 15, 20 minutes there, right? Scrolling, or just whatever you do to burn time. Spend that time just picking up a book, right? A book. Again, shameless plug. I've got 3 of them on Amazon if you want to kind of get some insights to this. But pick up a book about these things and just educate yourself. You know, we as a culture have seen to lessen that love for learning, right? We've lost that love for learning and expect for things to just be given to us. And it is in that expectation that ultimately we end up upset, because in choosing to not learn a little bit more about a topic, you're essentially at the mercy of whoever's giving you the information. But if you're empowered, right? If you're a person that's empowering yourself or have been empowered through education, now you can have a more intelligent conversation about whatever the thing is. Again, I know we're talking about insurance, but take this and apply it to every area, right? Don't just go out and buy a car and because somebody says it's the best car out there, that's the one you should get. No, learn a little something about it, especially if it's going to be a major purchase. And I guess that's what I'm getting at. You know, a pack of gum, not a big deal, right? A sandwich, yeah, you want to make sure it's not poisonous. Typically, they got organizations that'll regulate whether or not, you know, food safety is a thing. And when you were talking about major purchases, personally, things that can impact you financially in a major way, it would be helpful just to know a little bit more, because it's and like I said, it may not rub everybody the right way, but I do believe in personal responsibility. So it helps to understand a bit more before just, you know, turning over your hard-earned dollars, which is your time and energy, right? Your hard-earned dollars, before you just turn it over and say, here, you figure it out.
Yeah, I think I always remind people, you know, of my own past mistakes, but this kind of stuff, no one gets excited about this, except you. You get excited. Okay, but anyone in the business, so it's drudgery, okay, to do this research, whether it's an hour or 3 hours, or whatever. But this is the thing that I tell people, guess what? This is how you succeed in business, is doing these rotten, difficult, uninspiring things, okay, for a period of time to get to the level of, you know, I know enough. I'm not going to be an expert, but I know enough to make a quality decision. And that's what, just like you said about the TV. I think the best example ever. I use that often too. And I see it. You know every statistic for this football team, every yard this guy's run, every pass and everything else. And you tell me all that. That's for, they don't give a crap about you
at all.
They don't care what you know about them. You're never going to meet them. And you got their stinking name on the back of their jersey.
Exactly.
And you're walking around with it. You know, it's not your name. So, you know, but you won't go spend time for this. That from a business owner standpoint, for me, it could be tens of thousands of dollars a year
Mhm.
that becomes now pure profit for you that
Exactly.
you were expending. Like that alone should be enough to motivate you to go learn a bit,
Exactly.
right? I
Exactly.
mean, we got to think this way because there's an incredible save. This is year after year after year. You have your business for 20 years, and let's see, you're losing 50,000 a year,
Hmm.
right? Times 20.
Hmm.
That's a little bit of cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's yours. That gets to go in your pocket, right? That's straight up profit. So it's like, so if you got to invest 3 4 hours, go to a conference, maybe, one of these
Exactly.
kind of let's get somewhere where they're talking about this. Like, can they go somewhere and let's sit at the table for a day or a half a day? And like, I did this for real estate. I went to a
Yeah.
3 day deal. I'm no real estate, and I found out I learned so much on the gazillion ways to do real estate. Am I doing them all? No, but like I know now, I understand. I
Exactly.
brought one of my kids with me so they could learn. We invested the time to learn about this, whether we're going to apply some of it, all of it, none of it, we don't know. But if we have an interest and that could make a difference for us, right, for creating passive income or additional investment on assets, like, so we go do it.
Yeah.
Now, I took 3 days. It was 3 days of time. That's a
Yeah.
lot,
Probably about $1,000 or so, huh? Yeah,
yeah,
also, so no, it
and
wasn't free.
yeah, and I'm kind of worth some money per hour for what
Hmm.
I do. So it's like I wasn't coaching anyone, I wasn't working there, I was learning, right?
Hmm.
Because now I can bring that value back to my customers, my clients, my podcast. So, yeah, it's just that level of encouragement. They're really about the learning, and I do it with marketing and everything else. You don't need to be the great marketer, but you have to know something.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you think you're losing money now.
Just wait.
You're going to be dumping stuff in every bucket someone puts out in front of you, and you're going to have nothing. Okay, and nothing, no ROI or anything. So this is a big thing. It's really like I said, it's not a sexy topic for
Right.
some of us. Okay, but I love bringing it to the audience, Paul, because they have to think this way again. This is congruent with being a business owner.
Exactly.
Like this, you need to be thinking this way. You can't just go along to get along, or everyone does this and stuff like
Exactly.
that. You've got to be a contrarian in your thought process.
At
Like,
least a little
be
bit.
skeptical. Yeah, be a little skeptical. Hey, when you go give an estimate for a job, we're in contract and everything else, like, and they want their 3 estimates. Why don't they just go with me?
Hmm.
Because they're skeptical. Well, I say this: if I'm the first estimate and they want to get 2 more estimates, I'm a pretty poor salesman.
That
Okay,
too. That
because I
too.
because I win on the first
Didn't
time I
close the
show
deal.
up, and
Yep.
I have the methods. I developed that stuff. So you don't need, if I can bring the value, show you what it is, there you go, right? So you just got to look for the stuff. I think our whole biggest takeaway here is the the ability to do it is out there. Like you said, there's 700 companies,
Exactly.
not four. Okay, that alone should inspire you to go look, right?
So
So with that being said, how do people follow you? I know we said it a few times. Give us kind of the straight up. How do they connect with you? They want to talk to you about this stuff. Begin the process. What does that look like?
sure thing. Call or text. I've got a nationwide phone number you can call or text. That is 844-513-5433. Again, 844-513-5433. You can call or text it. If I'm not in the office, it gets routed to my cell. Reach out to me and connect with me personally so you can see who I am as a human. I kind of value the human interactions also. So Paul H. Flowers Jr. is on everything. And it's probably something obscure that somebody's going to be like, well, I went to this one and you weren't there. Okay, right. And I know
Are
you're out
you
there.
on
Hello, right.
Substack? Are you on Substack?
Actually, I just got on
Of
Substack. I
course you are.
just got
Of course.
just signed up for it. I think it was like a couple weeks ago, and I'm still figuring it out, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
we got to learn some of this stuff. But Paul H. Flowers Jr. Pop it in Google, pop it in social media. You can find me my website www.paul.health. Book a time, get on the calendar, or just again call. I'm very accessible, and I like to remain that way, both personally and professionally.
Well, I love it. And guys, you got to just do this. Okay. It's like shopping.
Mhm.
Learn something from your wives. They just go shopping. They don't always buy something, but they go sure to go look at a lot of stuff,
Mhm.
right? But this is the same principle. Let's get out there. Let's get some number comparison. Let's get some benefit comparison. Let's save yourself some money. Let's put that money back in your pocket where it belongs, not to someone who's not really even delivering what you're paying for, right? Let's get the same stuff for a significant discount, right?
Significant.
And it's a big deal and it matters. So I just want to encourage everyone with that. With that being said, Paul, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you just taking the time today, coming out here, sharing this. I like these topics. I love to throw them out there. It's not like we do them every week, but man, every now and then you get someone who's great at this, like you, and just gives the people an alternative. And I'm super appreciative for that, because I really want people to make a difference in their business. And they usually start by doing that when they can save money and increase their profits. So outstanding. So with that being said, everybody, we will see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Sharpen the Spear podcast. If today's episode helped you think sharper, act smarter, or see new profit potential, do me a favor. Share it with a fellow home service owner and leave a quick review. Ready to find the profit hiding in your business? Head to sharpenthespearcoaching.com and book your free profit discovery call today. And until next time, keep sharpening.